Shadcn is the most popular front-end component library, and it's now available for you to use as a free library in your FlutterFlow projects. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to import, set up, and use the Shadcn library. Let's start by creating a new project. We're just going to call it dashboard and create blank. Okay, so now let's import the library. So let's come over to settings right here and project dependencies. Let's add a library and search for Shadcn. Now make sure you've added the library to your account in Marketplace, and then you'll be ready to go. And all you have to do is go to that library page and hit add to project. Then it'll show up in your project dependencies dropdown. Okay, there it is, and let's select it. Here we see all of the resources that we have available to us, and that looks great. So now if you go into a page here and you want to add a widget, over here you see all of the components from the Shadcn library that you can just add in. But before we start building anything, make sure you've added the fonts you want, because Shadcn is just going to use whatever fonts you have set up in your project. If you want it to look exactly like the components, you want to use Geist. Now it is a Google font, but it's a variable font. So in order to use them in FlutterFlow, you want to download the font and then upload the static file. So if I come over here and come to my typography and icons and come over here to my primary family, custom fonts, add a font, and I'll upload those static files and just check that the mapping is done correctly. And that looks good. Okay, great. Let's add font. And don't forget a name. And I'll add that in as my secondary font too. Okay, next colors. Right now, the theme colors of the Shadcn library will be overwritten by your colors here. So just keep in mind that if you see components that look different, you can change them here. Okay, let's build stuff. So if I come into my column right here and come into my library components, and let's say I just want to add a button in here, let's add a button. Now, because these are components, when you select the component and scroll down, you're going to see all of the component parameters. Those are the properties that you have the ability to change. Now, as you're working with this library, you might come across additional properties that you want to change, or whole components that aren't in this library that you want. We will be continually updating this library, so send us an email here. We really would appreciate it. Okay, so for this button, we've got 3 parameters. The first one is the button variant. And right up here, we have these 5 different variations on buttons that you have available to you. Now, when you set it here, nothing's going to change here. You'll see it when you test your app, but you can always refer to the library docs to see what these will look like. Okay, next, let's set some text here. Let's just say submit. And finally, there's an action. So when the user clicks this button, what do you want to happen? Maybe you want to navigate them to some page or submit a form. That's what this parameter does. Now, if you want to see the inner workings of how this component was designed, you can double click into it and it'll open a read-only view. So when you select the button, you can look at how it's designed. You can look at how the parameters are set up. And while this doesn't really matter here because this is a pretty simple component, on some of the more complex components, it's sometimes helpful to get a view into the inner working. Okay, but let's build something for real. So let's get rid of this header right here and get rid of this button. And I want to build this. Now, this whole thing isn't a component. It's composed of components. And that's important to keep in mind that Shadcn is a component library. It's not a template library. So you use these components in your layout. It doesn't provide the layout for you. Okay, so what do we need? Well, first let's dump in a container and we'll just give it the full width here. Let's give it some padding and some border radius. I know it has a border color right here, so let's set it to that and let's give it some opacity. Okay, great. Finally, let's just give it a slight shadow right here. Okay, that looks good. Next, we're gonna need a column because these things are just stacked on top of one another. Okay, so let's come in here and let's add a column. And we have 2 texts in here. So we're gonna add 1 text and we're gonna duplicate that again. So Command D, and let's fix the spacing of our column right here. We want it to align it to the left and we wanna get it some padding to push it off from the edges. Okay, great. Next, let's just paste in the text that we need here. Then let's set the text styling right down here. Okay, that's looking great. Next, we have these items right here. So let's add a row in here and here we're bumping up the edge. So let's get rid of that height constraint on our container right here. And then let's add in a container that'll be our avatar. And I'll put in a background image, just pulling the network. Next in this row, we have 2 things stacked on top of one another. So that's going to be a column with 2 sets of text. We're just going to grab that and paste that in twice, and let's paste in the email, and let's fix those type, and the column alignment is off. There we go. Let's create some more room here in our row. So let's push it off from the top. Let's give it 16 pixels. And it looks like in this design, these are grouped and this is grouped over here. So let's wrap this in a row and then we can push these off. So let's come over here and we're going to wrap this in a row and then dump this in, and the order is off. So let's just pull that off. Beautiful. Then we can give this row a little spacing, 12 pixels. That looks great. And so let's close this up. And so here's our main row, and then we can just push everything off. We don't have anything else in there. It was only one item, so it's right there. But now we have our last component, this thing right here. And it's actually going to be two components because we have one component right here, and then when we click on it, we get this other component with this nice search in here. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's give our UI a little bit more space to breathe right here, and maybe give our container a max width of 500 pixels. That's great, and let's zoom in. All right, now let's add that component, and that is going to be a selection button right here. Now let's scroll down and see what parameters we have. Okay, the prompt text right here is going to be select ... and we're not using any leading icon, so we don't have anything set here. And so let's just run a test mode to see how this is looking. Okay, this is looking good, but it's a little long, and I want a trailing icon, so let's go fix that. Okay, so we're gonna come in here, and I want to say show trailing icon. That's this right here. And we'll set the width to 120 pixels. Let's take a look at that. Okay, yeah, that's looking a lot better. Next, onto that little searchable dialog box. All right, so what we want to happen is when the user clicks on that, so when they tap on it, we want to run this callback and we want a custom alert. And let's select our components, and you can see all of our components are in here, and it's going to be a selection menu. Okay, so what parameters do we need? Well, first we need this items thing. That's going to be the items in that list. And this is a data type of menu item. And that's part of the library that's been imported. Now, if you remember in here, when we pull this down, these are these roles right here. So let's go create that. So we're going to store this in an app state variable. So let's come over here. Let's add an app state variable. It will be of data type. And you can see we've got these right here, menu item, and it's going to be a list of those. So let's create, and let's give it a name, menu items. Beautiful. Now let's just add those in. So let's add this, and this will be viewer, and we'll just delete that. Editor, designer, and admin. All right, great. So now we can add that in here. So let's scroll down and let's have that. And now we can bind that. Beautiful. Okay, let's pass some more parameters here. We have a search hint, and we'll just add in search roles. Then we've got a select action. So this is when one of those roles is selected, what do we want to happen? Well, what do we want to happen? Well, we want that role to be selected, and we're currently not tracking that. So let's just add a page state variable here, and this ideally would be a component. And so you could add it in there, but we'll just add it in here for now. So we'll say role, and it'll be a string. Okay, so now we can go back into here, go onto our tap action, go into select action. So the user has selected it. And what are we doing? Well, we're updating this page state variable, our role, and we are setting it to the action parameter of the item. Okay, great. Let's go back to our item here. We've got that. Next, we want the width. We'll call it 150. Close that up. Empty list. Let's just say no role found. Then we've got the current selection, which is that page state variable we set up. That's how we're tracking the current selection. And finally, whether it's searchable. And that's cool. So of course, we're going to say yes. Okay, and I just want to fix the alignments right here because I know these intuitively, and I definitely didn't check this right beforehand. So let's test it out. All right, so let's go select this. Oh, beautiful. And maybe search for admin because of course, and select. All right, that's cool, except for we want it to reflect in the UI right there. And I don't want that gray over there. So let's fix that too. So let's come over here to our barrier color and make it fully transparent. And we need to come in here and go to the current selection and just bind that to that page state role variable. Okay, let's test it now. All right. Now come over here, of course, admin, beautiful. And that's how to use the Shadcn library in FlutterFlow. We've got a lot of components coming soon. We're continually building out new components, and please send us an email here if you have any feedback on the library. We can't wait to see what you'll build, and we'll see you in the next video.